It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Rob, and this is my State of the Dungeon address. This is the State of the Dungeon address for the game that took place on the 19th of May in the year 2022, a momentous session. First of all players were in attendance, including our newest member in this group. So we now have 6 faces at the table. And the newcomer is now playing Samool, Farstrider, who is a wizard with a taste for wanderlust and deep, deep thirst for the knowledge of magic. Oh dear, I now have 2 wizards in my group. Life is going to get very interesting. But, more to the point. Samool was going to be introduced very quickly, but when we last wrapped things up, the group was standing outside of the Temple of Tyr, the Hall of Judgment, in Waterdeep, where the courts flow through. The government and religion are inextricably tied together in some places in Waterdeep, and this is one of them. Most people believe that the clerics of Tyr and the priesthood are incorruptible, making them ideal judges. So they have a hand in the legal system. It's interesting, certainly. And since we have no players who are playing clerics or anything, there's no special favors given. But the group has been tasked by Knight Selvra of the Tyrian Knights, a follower and reverencer of Tyr. They were sent the previous session to go to the Waterdeep Wazoo, a tabloid. Yes, they have a tabloid that prints all kinds of crazy ideas and theories and stories and distributes them among Waterdeep. This has a effect of reaching lots and lots of people with whatever they print, which is interesting in its own way. And they gathered the information from the editor, who's a fun person. I enjoyed that part very much. But they got the information that he believes through a network and web of theories, facts, and guesses that apparently there's a noble named Castellanter who supposedly has an evil twin sister who is the actual Black Viper, a thief who scares nobles because this Black Viper has penetrated into the homes of nobles thought impenetrable and liberated precious relics and family heirlooms and wealth. So they're up in arms about that. They don't like being burgled. And this Black Viper has resisted all attempts to stop or contain him. So, who knows? But the Order of the Gauntlet wanted to know, so they kind of try to make sure that this isn't an agent of the Zentarim, for instance, or, you know, something more sinister. At the very least, it'll quiet the nobles up a bit. That's the thought. So, they were sent to get the information. They were coming back to the Hall of Judgment to deliver it. Before they had gotten there, they had also met Renaer Neverember, who they had rescued in the very first part of this story. And Renaer wanted to talk to them. They were, of course, interested because he's their friend. And he's often good for some interesting stuff going on. So, sure, they were going to set aside some time to talk to him. And as they were getting ready to go into the Hall of Judgment, they heard a noise and a call for Aldrich to stop. Aldrich turned and found out that the guildmaster of his guild, the Guild of Scribes and Magisters, was calling him. So, he came over, and this man's name is Master Pembrel. Master Pembrel is very old and very powerful, but a bit eccentric. His old age has given him some quirks, let's just say. So, the group waited while he chatted. And basically, what he had to say was that there's a brand new member of the guild. He just got into town. He does not know the ropes of Waterdeep. And while he has a certain prepossession about him, he is nosy and is caught looking in people's spellbooks and secret private ledgers and things like that, which is a no-no, especially when you're a newcomer in the city, acting more like a spy. So he was given to Aldrich to mine. Enter the new character. So that is how Samool came to join the group, and he made a positive impression. He is extremely enthusiastic, excited about everything, and seems very happy with his lot, which, you know, all things considered, yeah, it's a pretty plum place. You're freshly second level, you get stuck in a group that has an experienced wizard and all the meat shields you want, constantly getting into trouble and experiences. Yeah, for somebody like Samool, it's perfect. So Samool is a human, and he's traveled all over the place. His homelands is kind of the Dale lands. He's been traveling since he was very, very young, though, with his father. His father has now gone east, so they separated, but that's where they are. So they talked as they were going into the Hall of Judgment. Of course, not everybody feels comfortable going into Tyr's temple. That would be Luxor and Zarya, who've had interesting times with the law over time. So, that being the case, they sat outside while the others went in. And, you know, I got to describe the huge Hall of Judgment and all the people going through it. And also, it is one of the center of power of the Order of the Gauntlet. So they had adventurers working with the Order who were there. And, you know, people who were there for criminal proceedings. Lots of guard and lots of clergy of the Tyrian faith. Not really, you know, paladins just hanging around here and there, but, you know, this was a pretty brisk place for such a big place, though. It still had this imposing feeling. Well, they called an acolyte who sent a young learner out to go and find Knight Selvra, which they did quickly. And 5 minutes later, Selvra was there and took their deposition. It really wasn't anything too traumatic. She didn't rake them over the coals. She did not interrogate them. She just took their information. Which, again, she looked at and went, well, there's some ideas there, but in general, we have doubts. We think it's more, there are other avenues to explore rather than just his theories. But it was still something that they did for the Order of the Gauntlet, which makes them consider them a bit more for more crucial things, which is important. And when it all came down to it, they had done the job. So they were accorded that they had progressed and can be trusted with a little bit greater things. And they got rewarded with a pair of healing potions, which, let's face it, if you're an agent of the Order of the Gauntlet, you're probably going to need when you go toe-to-toe with some of the evil things that they have to face. So that meant that the rest of the day that they had was a lot of taking care of loose ends, buying things, talking about how the arrangements are going to go with Samool. And Samool ended up great. They gave him the upstairs attic next to Jazor's place, so they've got the 2 top areas, which makes them very happy. So they all have their own rooms. Everything is settled, and signed off and delivered. But other than that, they did a lot of talking and discussing things when the subject of their current dilemma came up. They're still trying to find out about the murderer who is killing the half-elves and elves on the docks of Waterdeep. And they have so far found out that it is a drow using a Gond gun. They have exhaustively in the prior session discovered that, but it led to some concerns, because the greatest number of drow in the town who have such weapons are an organized mercenary group They're known as being ruthless, and they're not the kind of people that a group of young adventurers really wants to get on the bad side of. Seriously, you don't want to do it. So, all of a sudden, because one of the things of this campaign is I let everybody choose on a random number one of the luminaries of the Dungeons and Dragons worlds, mostly in Waterdeep, of course, or mostly in Faerun. You guys get to choose one person who's going to be your buddy, somebody who owes you or likes you for whatever reason and is willing to help you in means that aren't entirely within the bounds of the contacts that you've already made in the city. So somebody who, if you are absolutely stuck, could come in and help you out. That was my intention, because I knew this was going to be a sprawling game with lots of avenues the characters could go in. It just so happens that Samool pulled that card right away, because they're looking for Drow. It just so happens his contact is one of the most famous Drow of all, Drist do Urden. Yes, that's right, the near mythical ranger happens to be an acquaintance. So he went to the Yawning Portal, contacted Durnan, and said, I would like to talk to my friend. The conversation was a little awkward because it turns out Samool, he's a wizard, he's not a bard, he's not a smooth talker, and his manner of speaking, Durnan immediately pegged him as being way too young and inexperienced. So he's like, okay, kid, tell you what. He was convinced eventually that he knew Drist and wasn't, setting up a trap or anything. And he offered to get a hold of Drist, because he does that for him. And that he could arrange for a meeting a couple of hours. They were happy with that. They had a beer, they had a drink at the Yawning Portal, and then went back to the group. Now, when the group were all together, they went up to the library and they started to have a powwow about all the different things they were thinking about and planning on doing. When the group was all together, they heard... Sorry about the vibration, but it was a knock on the outside door that leads to the common room in the tavern, or to the rooms above the tavern. So the fastest person in the group, which is Felix, shot down the stairs, opens the door, and there's a sun elf standing there saying, are you a member of a group of adventurers who's been, kind of getting pretty famous lately? Yeah. Is your group around? Yeah. Oh, I'd like to talk to you. Okay. Now, as soon as I said sun elf, everybody's hackles went up, because the sun elf, as far as anybody knows, is a member of the Zentarim. The Zentarim, for those of you who don't know, are a group of power-hungry... Well, they come from all walks of life, really. They have some that they keep for muscle. They have some with the brains to drive the group. Some who have the charm to be able to keep them relevant. Originally, they were a political faction started by the followers of Bane, who is the god of tyranny. That aspect isn't as strong as it used to be. Now they're led by a power-mad wizard named Manshun, who loves the clone spell and possibly has died, but his clones are still alive, so... The rumor is that one of his clones is still leading the thing. People have killed off his clones, though. It's not like he is indestructible. But, at the very least, you still have powerful wizards that are in the Zentarim, and they are dangerous. They are actually an outlawed faction that just belonging to the group will get you at the very least imprisoned, if not killed. More often killed, honestly. Most of the other factions stand against the Zentarim. So, that is suspecting that this guy is a member of the Zentarim, and they've been attacked by the Zentarim. They are not friendly towards the Zentarim. What is he doing here? Well, once Felix went up and told him that this guy wanted to see them, Luxor took off. As soon as he heard Sun Elf. Down the stairs, through the door. What are you doing here? He says, I heard you wanted to talk to me. Because he had mentioned that he was trying to talk to him through contacts. And I have some business with your friends. Oh, okay. He gave him the information that he had acquired so far, that the person who was killing the elves was a dark elf. And yes, the Zhentarim had given them a mission to stop further murders, to find the murderer and stop it. So, oddly altruistic, you might say. So, the idea was, go in and stop it. And so far, they've just hit a wall. Now it's dangerous to do this, because it's the Bregan Duarte who they may be fighting. And that's not a good thing for such low-level adventurers at this stage. He says, well, perhaps I found the wrong person for this job, but I really thought you could do it. If you can't, then so be it. But, I'm not going to trust you with greater things until you can take care of this one simple task for me. So he steeled his spine a little bit, and he's like, maybe I'll reconsider on the reward after you have succeeded. But as of right now, I think I'm not going to give you more money. You've already had money. And what is a little bit of money going to do for you at this stage? That's kind of an honest question because, well, now he knows about certain things. He might be able to spend some of that money, but realistically, he's not going to buy powerful magical items for this job. So they take him up to meet the others. This is the first time the rest of the others have seen this Sun Elf before. They'd all heard of him, though. And they heard of him from two different sides. They hadn't really heard of him as much from Loxor, because he was Loxor's personal contact. But they had heard of the suspicious Sun Elf and his half-elf bodyguard, or half-orc bodyguard, who they've already met, Yagra. But this is their first meeting as a group with Davil. Davil is the Sun Elf. And when he got a chance to talk, he's like, just so you know, I come here purely to try to help you. You are angering some people who can be very, very thorough in their vengeance if they're wronged. And you are not in a good position to take this. So I would caution you to be very careful about what you do in the near future, because your lives could very well be dependent on it. These are people who will kill you if you become a nuisance. As of right now, you're kind of intriguing. You may be interrupting some of what they're trying to do, but that's to be taken into account. That's what the planners are supposed to do, is deal with people who upset the plan by changing the plans, and that's fine if occasionally you take a job from somebody else and it gets in the way. They're not going to reveal their plans to you, but just heed warnings when you're going too far, when you're going into areas that you probably shouldn't go for your own welfare. And which they interpreted as a threat, rightfully so, especially when he said, you're landholders here, and at your young age, it would be a pity if fireballs started raining in through the windows of the home that everybody knows you stay in. Aha. Now all of a sudden they're like, how defensible is this home? Maybe it might be a good idea to get an inn room or something that's more, nondescript and anonymous. I don't know, but there was plenty of defiance in that. He's like, I don't want to see this happen. You're probably great people. You remind me of me when I was a young adventurer, but I'm telling you, I'm giving you this chance. Just, you don't even have to work for them or anything. Just back down a little bit. If you're willing to do that, you can still do all kinds of great things. You can help lots of people. You can be heroes. Just call off this war against the Zentarim. That's all they ask. And if you do find down the road that you need some extra help from something that's too big for all of your other contacts, they have reach in a lot of places that you don't. Might be handy. At this point, one person, everybody's having their own reactions, of course. Samool is intrigued but not happy with the circumstances because he had heard from his father that the Zentarim are not to be trusted. Felix kind of had bad vibes, it seemed like. He was interested in listening to him, especially when it came to, what's in it for us And he offered to take care of half of the bill they had yet on the Troll Skull Manor to refurbish it and get it up to running. He offered to pay them 450 gold, 450 shiny new dragons to take care of the inn, alleviate the burden of debt on them as a sign of good faith. Well, at the same time, Loxor's like, we should listen to him, guys. He's speaking sense, offering up a lot of money. It could be really good. Jazor, as a paladin of Selene, he's got more self-control than to whip out sword and start smiting. He did restrain himself, although you could tell it was a strong temptation to do this. But he resisted. Zarya was like, this guy talks too much. I just want to beat him. He talks too much. Aldrich was incandescent with rage. Appears that our Harper agent really hates the Zentarim for personal reasons, and told him to get out and he gets to live, and if he ever comes back, he's going to die. And actually, first he got kicked out of the room so they could talk privately. And to which he acknowledged, okay, yeah, it's your place. I'll walk out. I'll wait for your pleasure on what you wish to come up with. And then they talked privately about what the Zentarim mean and what their feelings were, and Aldrich was very passionate about how the Zentarim are absolutely untrustworthy in anything, and that they have personally hurt him, and he'll never work with them. And the others listened to that, and they were pretty moved, I believe. So then Aldrich goes out and he tells him the ultimatum. He's like, leave and never come back again, or we will kill you. And he's like, no. I will respect your decision, because I was young once. I was where you were, as a matter of fact, as a young adventuring wizard. But here's the thing. You and I, we're different from all those others. They have their short little lives to try to do all that they can. We have to look at the long game. So now, cousin, perhaps you should think, someday you might be beyond your resources on a problem that you have. Might be a good idea to have a few extra resources outside that you can draw on to solve the problems that will eventually come up. Because all these other strings they're tying to you are holding you down. And they're going to be demanding on you all the time. This is something that won't. And he was kicked out. I mean, Aldrich was not going to side with him, obviously. He listened. He didn't, start casting spells and attack or anything, like go into the Blade Song. But he was adamant. So, Davil left. Davil Sarsong is somebody who's now known to them as a Zhentarim agent. He said that he does not work as a member of the Zentarim, but Aldrich knows. He knows. I think Loxor is pretty sure of it too. So, Davil leaves. Alright, what are we going to do now? Well, again, there's some running around that happens, and as it turns out, Felix went and ran and did some errands. And as he was running out, over by the tanners, because they were getting some leather armor made from some cowhide, the bull that they had killed before, the prior session, yeah, that, or 2 sessions ago, yeah. They were going to make that into leather, and along the way, he got called over by somebody who was just learning their first fighting abilities as a ranger while he was getting his up to 2nd level. And this young man says, Felix, we have a problem. Far off to the south, we have a noble and his caravan travelers that have gone missing. So the rangers are all out searching for them. But there's something near to Waterdeep that the rangers would normally take care of, but they're all busy on this task for the Lord's Alliance. It would be nice if you and your friends could take care of it, and it's easily within your ability. The farmers who are working on planting their fields have been complaining that they've been attacked by monsters. Animated scarecrows that have been attacking them in the fields while they're getting ready to pick rocks and plant for the spring. Okay, it's another job. Sure. This one promises a bit of fighting, so the group is really ready to start sinking weapons into things, so probably for the best. By the time he runs back, they're all like, cool, as soon as Driss gets here, we're going to take this. Now, I am going to have to go back and one point. I did forget one thing. They did meet with Rainier early in the session. Rainier Neverember, of course, noble. And he told them of an opportunity that might come before them. Because one of the things that he did, or his father did, Daggold Neverember, the previous Open Lord of Waterdeep, one of the things that he did was to tie everybody up in knots so they were chasing different things rather than planning to usurp him or kill him or whatever, is he would hold promises of certain things out and let people scramble for them. One of the things was that he kept in play was the item marker for ownership of the Kingsfoil. The Kingsfoil is basically a minting house in Waterdeep in the Castle Ward. And it is one of the few places in the civilized world that is considered an absolute authority with the quality and, again, authority, very big, to make signets, heraldries, grant new heraldries, and basically the kind of thing kings and nobles need to preserve their status. To do official things, to be able to have official seals, comes from places like this, and there's only a few in the civilized world. So, if they can find this item, they can claim the place, which will mean not that they have to manage it, because it's basically to the point where it runs by itself through tradition, very tightly kept apprenticeships and the like. And they never have to sink any money into it because a lot of money flows through it already, and it's already got enough stocks and things like pure gold and the kind of dyes and everything that you would use to make these seals, and the craftsmen who are just there as part of their everyday life is this work that they do. So the item is a marble duck. It looks like a rubber ducky. It can fit in your hand, weighs a little over 5 pounds. If they find this in the course of their adventures, they could have a choice. They could walk up to the guild of scribes and, yeah, really the scribes and magisters, with this duck and say, we own the Kingsfoil now. And they would say, yes, by law, you have that. Yes, you do own the Kingsfoil. Very good. And they could get pretty wealthy. And also have massive targets drawn on their backs. What Rainier offered was that if they give it to him, he'll make sure they get stipends. He'll be trusted with it as one of the noble class. It will elevate his status so that he can help them more. And he'll make sure that he remembers his friends who brought it to him. Because right now, he is the son of a disgraced and, well, exiled is a little rough. But let's just say Neverwinter doesn't want it, or Waterdeep doesn't want him back. He's holed up in Neverwinter at the moment trying to fix that city's problems. That's left Rainier in kind of a gray area. So this would be a good thing for him. So, there he is. So, that was an offer that was made to them earlier. But now we get to the meat of the show. Driss shows up early, only after 2 hours. Driss talks to them, and they tell him the situation. They're like, we're looking for a murderer. We know he's a drow. We know that he uses guns. We think that he is, or is hired by Zardoz Zard. After they have talked to Zardoz, the master of the, I think Sea Maiden's Pleasure or whatever, a ship that is out in the bay that is used for nightly debaucheries and entertainments, and it was nice enough to give them all tickets to the place, which they think is a trap. Probably with good justification. But they think he has something to do with it. They tracked him missing guns from the Temple of Gond that he claims he never received, which might have been used in these murders. So, what happened. Drist listened to their story. He listened to everything very carefully, and he says, I can tell you this. I know of Zard. He is not your murderer. He is a lot of things. Is he a criminal? Yes. Is he a murderer for random elves? No. That is not possible. If you aren't thinking that the Brig and Duartha are the murderers, I can tell you this. They are not. They are disciplined, and while they are not always scrupulous, they are very efficient at the ways they take care of things. They have no interest in casual murders. None among their number would dare to indulge in a hatred of elves to the point of killing them freelance. You're probably looking for someone else. And they pressed the case, they gave him the evidence and everything, and he's like, all right, I'll tell you what. I will go and talk to Zardoz. I will look into the Brig and Duartha. And I will give you, if I can, the name of the murderer, where he can be found, etc. And they were like, okay, that's fair. But he's like, but you're going to have to pay me. Unless I call this as the debt you owe me, gesturing to Samool. And Samool's like, well, I don't really know these guys. If that's what it takes, And he's like, no. You're obviously helping them. It is their benefit. What do you want, Mr. Doerden? I'll take 5 drink vouchers at your place when it is finally opened. Yes! Definitely! Come in here, drink our best! Absolutely! So, they go to get drink vouchers made up for this. So Trist takes off. They all do their thing. They have various tasks involving setting up the kitchen, cooking, and chit-chatting with, of course, remember, they still have Khalees in the basement, the artificer, who has just gotten finished with one of those freeze stones for Jazor. He's very happy about that. And as, eventually he comes back, fairly quickly. And he tells them, first of all, Zardoz did not do it. The Brig and Duartha did not do it, as I told you. There is a renegade drow sharpshooter in town. He gave them his name. And they're like, well, how do we catch him? And he's like, well, he's like a mad dog. He's a renegade. He is only interested in killing elves. I am a ranger. How would I do it? I would use bait. That's how you catch a ravenous beast. How you do that is up to you. And they're all looking at Aldrich as, well, he's an elf. But, who knows what they'll figure out. But, Drist is like, well, that is all I got for you. You need nothing else of me. I will depart. And he took off because he's a busy guy. Bound to be. So he takes off, and now Drist is not going to be available to them as a resource for a while. That's kind of the nature of it. You call on your mentor or your guide, your friend, your whatever, and they're going to take off for a while. You can't just keep using them. So they talk things over, and Felix comes up and says, hey, we got a mission. We can take out scarecrows. Animated ones that are scaring the farmers. And they're like, all right, haven't gotten our swords wet in a while. Let's do it. So they go out to the fields without a lot of preamble. They actually directly go in on this, and I'm pretty happy for that. I thought they were going to talk their way through the night, but no, they didn't. Pulled up the boards, got the battle mat out. It was great. So they looked around. They talked to some of the few farmers who were in the fields taking care of their crops. There weren't many of them, not nearly as many as there should be. It's going to be a really bad harvest if they can't get out there into the fields. And they talked to one guy, and he kind of had a strange nautical accent, but he told them that, the scarecrows are going around terrifying people. They broke one person's arm. They haven't killed yet, but everyone's watching out for them. He says, I've got my pitchfork. I'm ready to deal with them if they come along, but gotta get my field ready. So the group's like, where have they been spotted? And he's like, they're all over the place. But the latest sighting has been over there, and there were a couple of them over in that yard. And then just a little bit later, talk about another one being farther down came up. So, all right, well, that's an issue. So they went over into the field where some had been spotted. And they found that the field was abandoned. It was a work shed. There was a cart in the middle of the field. Looked like they had been throwing rocks into it to get them out of the field. And immediately, almost, Felix is like, I'm getting up on that cart. I want to have the high ground advantage. As an archer, makes sense. So he got over there. The rest of them, there's lots of bundles of straw here and there. Mostly for feed for the horses and such, and fodder. Some of it for drying up excessive water and then turning it under to aerate the soil. There's reasons why they would have it out in the field. But they were going around and looking to see if they could find clothes that were wrapped up in some of the bundles of straw that might denote that, yeah, there's a scarecrow there. And about the time, well, using his talents, Samool just cast a detect magic spell. And he's like, oh, there's magic all over the place. Jazor used his sense evil. And yeah, there's faint trails of evil, but that's, again, going everywhere without seeming pattern. But he can sense that there's something. So some of them go one way, and Felix stays on his wagon. And Zarya and Aldrich are staying by themselves while Aldrich is finishing casting his detect magic as a ritual. That's when the scarecrows attacked. 2 scarecrows go and attack the main body of the group. That would be Samool, that would be Loxor, that would be Jazor, who are about 45 feet away from the cart. On top of the cart, you have Felix, and all of a sudden this rocky man with a pitchfork with rocky spines comes out of the ground and gets ready to attack him. And then one other scarecrow comes up to attack Zarya, and gosh, this is getting bad. Aldrich. So these scarecrows are pathetic. I had the worst luck. I don't think they hit anybody, which was sad. But I tried. They tried to attack. A couple of things happened. First of all, Samool found out that, yeah, finger of fire, firebolts work really well on these scarecrows. They burn great. They don't have vulnerability, but they catch fire and they continue burning, which is pretty dang effective. They found out that bludgeoning weapons don't do anything to them, really, and they have resistance against impaling weapons. That resistance thing was going to come up quite a bit. The rocky fellow who rose up out of the ground, well, Felix is like, oh, you're coming up. Shot him with his bow. Didn't do a huge amount of damage. And certainly not enough to stop him from trying to petrify Felix himself. But the fight started swinging around. The one that came up after Aldrich tried to attack him while he was still casting his spell. That didn't work. My dice were horrible. Aldrich pops on his blade song. He was just waiting for that. And he casts Protection from Evil on Zarya. So now Zarya gets disadvantage on attacks against this creature because they don't know it, but it is undead in nature. This is a particularly nasty little curse that's going on. So she's now resistant, and it can't hit him because I can't hit anything. All told, the body of the group takes out the 2 that are over there on them. And then they come over to help Felix out. By the time they do that, by the time Samool shows off some of his tricks and starts throwing firebolts, but with an aspect of thunder on them instead of fire, after the rock creature, and Jazor has managed to score a hit, so he feels like he's working well. And of course, Loxor's Eldritch blasts wherever. Eventually, Felix decided, I'm going to pull out my sword, since the thing is right in hand-to-hand, and use my Zephyr Strike to inflict damage. Again, using the impaling short sword didn't work very well on the rocky creature, as it was resistant to non-magical weapons, but as he uses Zephyr Strike, he was able to inflict that force damage on the creature. So eventually they chopped it down. When the rock creature died, it exploded into sharp gravel all around, which did catch Jazor and Felix in the faces. Only Felix, with his unfortunate luck, took it fully. But, yeah, that was kind of an unpleasant fight. And by the time those two Scarecrows and the Rockman were down, it was just about time to say goodbye to the last Scarecrow, which Zarya was taking a little bit of time to chop down, but she eventually got through it. And as she finished it off, a whirlwind appeared in the center of the field. It was sucking up the rocks from the field into it and getting ready to maul them. It was charging towards the body of the group. Aldrich and Zarya were determined not to be out of this fight, so they went charging up. And then came the most ridiculous collection of 20s, one after the other after the other. They inflicted grievous harm. Jazor delivered a massive blow. Loxor delivered a blow. Felix started off with a massive 20, a huge blow that, again, devastated this thing. However, it had a big bag of hit points because I knew it was a good time for them all to, enjoy, fighting together, showing off their different talents that they could do now that they have the full 6 people in the group. And it was pretty good. It went well. Again, my luck was terrible. There was a shot, I think, that flew out and hit Felix with a rock. It missed a few other times. It had a hard time getting at Jazor, because it has a nice engulf thing that was going to smash it with all the stones inside. It only got him on the round it died in. And then, well, Loxor finished off with an Eldritch Blast that destroyed it, and Jazor was let go, although he wasn't the most nimble about it and ended up in a manure pile. But that was how the battle went. We got a nice taste of combat in at the end. Everybody got to pull off some moves. They helped out. What they had heard was that a particular green faction was interested in this, so they have helped out the Emerald Enclave, albeit somewhat indirectly. Trust me, they know. So, yeah, another faction has stepped forward and asked for their help, and they obliged. So, they're moving on up. So, it's been fun. They had a good night. They bonded well together. I think they're all getting comfortable in the position they find the party in, which is great. I'm seeing some progression in role-playing, which is awesome. I'm very happy for. And we'll see how it goes. We've got... last count, Zarya, I think, is working towards finding things to do to tie her into the world, things that she's passionate about, besides just punching people. So she's, I think, working on that next step of finding things of interest to her character to tie her in. Aldrich, clearly, he's working on becoming the greatest wizard he can, and that's something Samool will join him on. They've got spell books to share and learn and drive each other's studies. And now every time they level up, they're going to get 4 spells of their pick because they can coordinate, and each of them can get 2 spells, and they'll swap spells, and yay! It's a nice little commune. It's fun to watch Jazor, passionate about bringing an element of cooking into this character that he can make a living off of and he can excel in and bring to the game. Honestly, Loxor is... Did I say Jazor? Jazor did that. Jazor did that. Plus, he's also really been doing well as far as being a paladin of Selene and selling that. Loxor has worked hard to be a free agent. He has argued himself well when it was necessary. He consistently goes out and does things on his own, which is nice to see. Sometimes that'll cause problems. Sometimes it will bring interesting things back to the group, but it's fun to see. And Felix, another person who's always looking out for trouble and then stopping it before it happens. It's nice to have somebody like that for the group, but I do hope he has more individual passions and things that he's interested in that drive some of his interests and pursuits. It'll all be very, very interesting as we go. So, that's the state of the dungeon as it is right now. Thank you for joining me, and if you enjoy these adventures, and you enjoy the stories of these characters, feel free to watch the other records that I've made of their exploits, and stay tuned. We will have plenty more before this is done. Until then, thank you, I'm Rob, and I'll see you next time. Farewell.